Okay, welcome all. It's Making Waves, episode 18. Thank you for joining us. Well, we're very lucky to have a two for tonight. So listen, without further ado, my name is Justin. Co-host here is Chad. You guys know Chad from the band Wilson, and he's also
What's
the
up?
host of Shiprocked 20 and 21 coming up in this next May. Anyway, we're super stoked tonight to have Zach and Kent from the band Like a Storm. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on this Wednesday evening. You guys are right now in the midst of, I think, recording your fourth album, and so you guys are definitely making the best of your time in this COVID situation we're in. So kudos to you folks. So, but again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us, man. It's good to see you guys.
Yeah.
I got a question, and this maybe I'm sorry that I'm kind of throwing Zach under the bus here. Well, all of us besides you, Ken. So, like, why the hell would you start a band with your brothers?
Well, I'm the only non-brother, so
I know. So I was like, I think I'm not gonna Zach's like out of this equation here because he's like a normal human being, but you can't like what's up with that? Like, what was your deal when you guys first started? Like when you looked around the room at your options, you're like, the two people I probably argue with the most. Let's do this for the rest of our lives. What happened there?
Actually, that side of it could be quite good because you can go to those like brotherly arguments, and Zach could probably attest to this. And it can get worse than any argument that we haven't really done them in years, but it can get worse than any argument you'd have between two normal people. But then you don't hold a grudge. So then, and I remember people like in the crew and stuff, you'd be like, fuck you, man, fuck you. And then, cool, what's for lunch? So what are we having for lunch? Okay, you want to come for lunch? And whereas two people will do like passive aggressive digs and power plays, and then they'll have this long standing feud between them that never gets settled and eventually breaks up a band, And we just, when it's your brothers, it's all out on the table, man. You know exactly what everybody thinks about everything because no one's shy about sharing it.
That's funny. I never thought about because you could like speaking of being out of the table and going to lunch, you could punch your brother's sandwich, right? And like you normally that'd be like two dudes would fight. Like you just have your buyouts. Somebody punches your sandwich. That's a whole thing for the rest of the day. You guys are no longer friends moving forward forever. However, you're punching your brother's sandwich, and he's all like, all right, well, I'm gonna forget about that tomorrow because got other shit to do, and I came out of the same womb as you. Without that being
just
said,
like probably the flashpoint goes a lot quicker because you also don't like hold back, right? Because you've known one another your whole lives, and nobody's going anywhere. So, but then you get over it quicker, and it kind of just started because we were all in different bands growing up, and then we used to jam together, but kind of thought it was quite kind of a bit naff to be in a band with your brothers, when we were teenagers. Didn't want to look like that kind of thing.
Yeah, like and because you guys are hot too.
Yeah, so, well, and like even when we first moved and we were making our first record in Los Angeles, this management company was like, "I got it. You guys are gonna be like the Jonas Brothers of rock," and we were like, "Cool, thanks, man. Nice to meet you. See you later."
Yeah.
And Zach, he's got a front row seat to all this, like the drama that you must be like, yes, my precious, when it pops off. How does that work for you, bud?
It definitely gets pretty intense, but like Kent said, they haven't really had any bad ones in years. But I mean, when we were touring the band before we moved to tour buses, it could get pretty heated, driving 12 hours in one day, and then someone says something, it just gets taken the wrong way. But all that, it hasn't happened in a while.
And Chad, you must know that a lot of that has to do with the fact that you've been in a van for 12 hours together. You know what I mean? It wouldn't matter who was in there and what's going on. It's like when a band first starts out, you put yourself in some pretty gnarly circumstances just to try and get things going.
Not only yourself, but like literally everybody else that's in your war path, right? As you guys can probably attest to, when you're in that band, I can't imagine being in a band with my siblings and then I can't imagine being Zach being in a band with 3 siblings in a van traveling overnight for 12 hours from load out to load in and being like, oh my, just like sitting back in the back seat being like, please, for the love of God, don't let this be the night that we fucking fly off the road because 3 brothers started arguing.
Yeah, but I would imagine at that point too, that after that first tour, Zach's basically part of the whole brotherhood too. Maybe not the blood, but everything is close. And then you start getting to a point, you start realizing bands like Chevelle and Kings of Leon and God forbid the Beach Boys are these massively influential bands, and after a while you just forget that they're related.
Yeah, and we think of Zach. We've always treated Zach evenly. I mean, I don't spend a lot of time thinking about the fact they're my brothers.
Yeah.
You know, just I don't spend a lot of time thinking about the fact Zach's not my brother. We just sort of get on with it. We're closer than friends for all the time you spend together. You know, years touring, traveling around the world, doing all this stuff that only the four of us each know what it's like to have gone and done. You know.
Yeah.
Totally.
So let me ask you guys, I'm going to throw you guys the interview 101 question. Zach, I got to start with you, bud. Who are your influences when you were growing up? Who made you say, you know what? I think I'm going to be, I think this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a musician for my life.
I actually have two exact moments of when that was, and each one's very special, actually. When I was around 10 years old, for those of you who don't know, my father was a tour manager for a lot of really famous bands. And one of these bands at the time was Godsmack. And it was my birthday, and I went to see him because he was on tour, so I haven't seen him in several months. And Shannon, the drummer of Godsmack, knew it was my birthday. And for the song Whatever, they invited me to go on there and play the drums for it. And I was just starting off drums at this time. And it was in front of 15,000 people. And like that night, after doing that, I knew that's something I want to continue to do for the rest of my life because there's just no other feeling like that. And what was really awesome was 2 years ago when we actually ended up touring with Godsmack, we played AC/DC, all four of us on stage with Godsmack. It kind of felt like full circle. And it introduced me to it, and then we were ending up doing it together. And my other major influence would be Scott Phillips from Creed and Alter Bridge. He's an amazing drummer overall. And they've let me play with them a couple of times at Soundcheck. And just being able to play with Mark and Brian and Miles is incredible feeling. It's just something you want to keep doing. And that's definitely what really kind of got me started wanting to pursue being in a band.
That's what's interesting too, is that you actually had, well, I dare say, the gumption to get up and play with Shannon, and actually Sully too, who's a hell of a drummer. And how was that intimidating? You just kind of go with it. I mean, or do you feel like, hey, I'm really good friends with these guys because everything, the association with my father? Was it easy that way, or was it even more nerve-wracking?
It was actually really nerve-wracking. It was in Dallas when we did that, and then the first time I think was in New Jersey, and it wasn't even the fact there's like 20,000 people watching. It's because Shannon is watching me play drums. So I was like, oh God, I got to play my dad. He's my idol. So
yeah, it's
definitely more nerve-wracking having them watch me than the crowd, for sure.
Yeah. I tell you what, I still, those guys have all been around. I mean, everyone you've mentioned has been around for a long time, but I still consider them somewhat new. Like when you think of a new influence,
for sure.
I always love hearing when people like that are name checked as influences instead of people going Bonham or, Buddy Rich or whoever. So it's always great to hear that. So thank you so much for that. And Kent, how about you?
Well, I started out playing drums, and it wasn't anywhere near as good as Zach has come to be. But so I was really into Nirvana, Dave Grohl, and Guns N' Roses, especially that first Guns N' Roses record with Steven Adler, and Metallica. And then I started writing songs, and so kind of started playing more guitar just to get to get more into that songwriting space. And then for ages we were like, it was Chris, Matt, and I all playing guitar, and we couldn't find a bassist, and we were like, this is ridiculous. We're like, we don't need to be Iron Maiden with 3 guitarists, and then we don't even have a bassist. So I was like, cool, all right, I'll switch to playing bass. And that was right before our first record. So the whole time that we've been doing what we've been doing, I've always played bass. But then I kind of just grew to love that, and just kind of did a deep dive on that, all the different various eras of all the Metallica bassists, for example, the Rage Against the Machine bassists, what Paul McCartney was doing in the Beatles.
Yeah, those are heavy hitters. Let me ask you, is there a certain, when you become a rhythm section, is there a certain like intuition between the two? Is a connection or something? I don't want to think of some sort of like spiritual or magical thing, but is there a certain connection between drummer and bassist when you guys are getting to it? I mean, guitarists kind of tend to wander off, and we all know about lead singers. So just kind of curious. Yeah, sorry, Chad.
I like to call it top bunk, bottom bunk. Right? That's what I refer to the rhythm section.
Yeah. Well, that was, for me, that was the first part. Going from guitar to bass was, a guitarist could just look, or I certainly did anyway, you just look at a bass as being, it's a guitar with less strings. And then you suddenly start to realize, like, no, actually my job isn't to play those melodies as much as get locked with that drummer and make that sound like it's one thing, the two of us playing together. So we worked on that heaps in the beginning. And then by now, I think, like, man, like, back in those, Zach and I were always the ones that shared hotel rooms together and stuff. So we've always just had a real tight connection.
Yeah.
And that translates on the stage.
Well, Kent, could I ask you, coming from someone who wanted to be a drummer, that was your first thing. Was it kind of easy then to transition about the whole thing of like following the drummer when you're playing bass?
Yeah, I think so, because I've always been really mindful of what the drums are doing. And in fact, when I'm up on stage, most of my mix is pretty much the drums, because as I say, like I kind of see my main job is to lock in with what he's doing, and then the rest of it kind of sits on top, you know?
Okay. Yeah. Zach, same way? Same feel?
Yeah, in fact, it really took me to start touring and playing live music to appreciate bass as much as I do now. When I was younger and just hear it on records, it's there, but I don't know, I was just young and didn't really pay attention to it. But when you start touring live and you actually feel the bass and how locked it is with the drum kit, you just completely, it's your backbone. You need it just as much as they need you. So
yeah. Interesting. Well, thanks, guys. Yeah.
The thing about the bass too, and I have to say, I didn't really pay attention to it either, and it really wasn't until James, like the Wilson bassist, when I was playing with him and I watched him play, and I'm like, oh, that's what a bassist can do. Not like finding that area to where that works with the drums but also having those moments inside of the song where it's like, this isn't just a partnership. It's like ebb and flow in areas where spaces are in between kicks and snares and things like that. And that was the first time for me. And that was like 10 years ago. And so I felt like a little bit of like an asshole and being like, because I always used to say bass, basically nobody cares or whatever it was until like James. And I was like, oh, okay.
I was the same, Yeah, I always thought the bassist was the dude out of the mates who drew the short straw. Like when we were teenagers growing up. Like some dude got to be guitarist, very few got to be lead singer, and some other dudes got to be the drummers, and I was like, why does the dude want to play the bass? And then when I started playing it, you really get it, because you lock it, you kind of bridge the gap between the guitars and the drums, and it's that kind of instrument that nobody notices, but you really notice when it like cuts out at a gig. Like if all of a sudden there's no low end. That's the first thing the crowd can't pick up on.
Well, it's funny you mentioned Iron Maiden as a reference a little earlier about the guitar thing, because without Steve Harris, I couldn't even think of Iron Maiden without Harris driving the band. Or it's the same with like when you talk about rhythm sections, I can't think about Geezer Butler and Bill Ward together. I can't think about those two not playing. They're actually the strongest components of the band.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, it is. Not to keep harping on this bass thing, but I just can't help but notice like.
This is Bass Aficionado, isn't it? Podcast Bass Aficionado. Am I right? I've come to the right place. Yeah,
we have an open agenda. We have no agenda.
Hello, how you doing? We're on bass. But I had a question about right. who, because like we heard about your brothers, all three of you playing guitar, right? And at one point you couldn't find a bassist, right? So somebody had to do it. Why you? Like, what was it? What was that decision making moment? Rochambeau?
Well, I kind of offered. I've always I grew up playing piano and then drums and then guitar and bass. So I've always loved being able to play it, but I don't play any of them like exceptionally well, but I've always loved being able to move around them. So to me, it was kind of like, oh, this would be a cool thing to try doing. And then Chris and Matt both sing lead. So I don't know if there are bands that do that, but typically the lead singer's got the guitar and the bass does have to be tight with the drums, and the guitar, not ideally, but the guitar can be a little bit hairy as the lead singer is strumming away. And so, you need, it's just for a few reasons, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so you wanted
Zach,
to experiment. You were probably
Zach, could I ask you, Zach, I was going to ask, could you switch to bass if you had to? If you guys ever had to like interchange, or have you guys ever done that when you're practicing? Like, hey, let me give the bass a whack, and you take over the drums. Have you guys ever done that?
I have no idea how to play guitar or bass. The only instrument I play is drums. I mean, I might look cool with the bass, but that's about it. I don't think I could. Sure. I don't know how to strum it.
That's all you need, bro. You look cool right now, or you put a bass guitar on you. Yeah. Game over.
I have a picture
actually he does look cool with the bass guitar on. It just doesn't sound very cool, but he does look fucking cool with the bass on.
I love that.
Great.
I've always thought that.
I wanted to circle on one thing. I mean, I'm sure you get asked this a lot, and so excuse me for being that guy. I'll try to find my own wording here. However, you're in New Zealand right now, Ken, right? And and Zach, you're in Los Angeles, so your continents among many apart. And at some point in time, you had to meet each other, which is, I'm assuming, is through the various forms of touring, and Zach came into the fold. I'm not. You can tell me here, but my real question is, why the fuck does why did the other two members of your family unit decide to move to the U.S. when you have New Zealand, which is so beautiful and so amazing? Like, why was that implanting happening? How did that happen, I guess?
Well, we all moved up. We moved up to Vancouver. When we grew up, like, New Zealand's kind of got these dual influences for music, right? And a lot of people are influenced by English music and that English scene, Oasis, Blur, Britpop, you know, those kinds of bands. And then others are influenced by the American side, you know, your Metallicas and your, you know, Guns N' Roses and Soundgardens and all of that. And we always, our dream was to come up and have a career in the US. And so, like, we love it in New Zealand. Like, it is the greatest country on earth, but it's a really small country, which is partly why it's the greatest country on earth. You know, it's really isolated, it's tucked away, it's green, it's quiet, it's clean. But you couldn't have a touring career or a professional career without going overseas. And so, yeah, so we left back before our first record and moved to Vancouver. But the goal was to come into the US. And one day we paid a guy enough money and we hopped in the back of his truck. And no, we made our first record in LA.
Story.
Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, seriously, how did you guys meet? The two, I mean, especially being where you were at the time in your life and where they were at the time in their life.
How we met?
Yeah, Zach. Yeah. How did you meet these guys?
I guess it was like 10 years ago now. Going back to my dad tour managing. He was tour managing Creed on that reunion tour in 2009 or 10, whenever that was. And they were the opening band on it. And I wanted to go because I saw their music video for Chemical Infatuation. And I was like, that's really badass. I want to meet those guys. So I had my dad introduce me, and the rest is kind of history. We just kicked it off, and I told them I played drums, and we became close family friends. And every time they were in town, they'd come over our house and we jammed together and stuff. And as the years went on, position opened itself, and they knew I knew all the songs. And I got a call one day, and I've been in the band ever since. It's kind of how it worked. But it was just one of those right place at right time things, because if I didn't go to that show, I would have never met them.
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah. And if you hadn't taken an interest in the music, it would have never happened. It'd just been like, oh, you're the opening band. Okay. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It boggles your mind when you think about that stuff. If I did this or if I didn't do that, like where I'd be. It was a simple decision, because the show was about 3 hours away. So I wasn't really sure if I was going to go or not anyway. So, but it changed my life though. That's for sure.
Yeah. Wow. That's
the stars align.
Definitely.
What did you think, Ken, when he came in and said, "Hey, what's up? I'm this dude's son. I love your band." And, how did you move from like, right on, bro, into like to oh shit, you should be in our band? What was that moment for you?
Well, we got to know their whole family and became really tight with that family over the years. And then Zach was drumming in different bands, and it kind of just seemed like one of those things that you just didn't really think about until the opportunity presented itself. And Zach came out for a tour. Actually, the first gig was in Detroit, where you are, at the Fillmore.
Wow. Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And we've just, I mean, and a big part of it is as you know, is it's not just the musical chemistry, it's being able to be mates and hang out together and tolerate one another's company. And, most of the stuff you end up doing in a band, if you're on a tour bus or airports or hotels or, at a backstage at a venue, there's most of the days just being around one another. And we've just always hit it off, and then musically as well. I mean, Zach's just an absolute beast on the drums. What he doesn't do on the bass guitar, he more than makes up for on the drums.
And he looks good. You're like a double whammy there.
Yeah. And he looks damn good with the bass.
Yeah, exactly. Do you guys haze him? I have to ask that. And then I'll move on from this.
I think Zach, has the hazing ever ended from Chris to you?
It's mainly Chris, the singer, because we have like a really fun friendship. It's never, I don't think it ever will. I mean, I could be in that band for 30 more years; it will still go on.
I love that. Hazing band members like for love is like the whole reason, at least why I why I got in the van every tour. I was like, wait, I'm going to get to make fun of these guys for 2 months. Let's go.
I also made the mistake in telling them that I always wanted brothers when I was younger, and now that we all tour, we're basically all brothers. And now Chris is acting as the older brother, picking on the younger one, obviously. So
now you're stoked you didn't have brothers.
yes.
Yeah. Oh, that's great, man. Sorry, I had to ask those questions because, I mean, obviously you've been asked it before, but I figured we might as well, nail that, the head of that call.
I thought we were going to talk about bass guitar for 2 hours. What's going on?
Yeah, well, we are on basically making waves, so I would understand why. So I guess moving on from there, we talked a little bit about that cool situation that you guys had from your influences, from coming from an influence, as Justin brought out of you here, but then also turning that influence around into being a moment in your life that you'll remember forever, obviously. But on tour in general, as we've been talking about, what are some of like the most standout situations, tours that you've ever been on? I mean, you guys have been out with Alter Bridge, Blackstone Cherry, Hell Yeah, 3 Days Grace, Steel Panther, Shinedown, and Godsmack. Do you have any like, things that, and Wilson? Thank you for letting us tour with you. We opened up for these guys last summer, right? August.
Dude, that was so fun. Yeah, man.
Yeah, it was a really great time. It was actually our last tour, and we knew that before going into that. I don't think we told you guys that because we're like,
oh god, I always just assumed it was being on tour with us. You're like,
it's like watching
you
guys.
Yeah, I knew it. Fuck this.
I was like,
that's right.
I can't do this anymore. Do you have any like incredible stories that you just like, that you will never ever be able to like, experience again, type sort of like taking it to the grave things?
When you meet icons like meeting Slash and getting to tour with Slash, and we played with him at the House of Blues in New Orleans, and that I mean, it is for anyone, but especially if you come from New Zealand, that's a real pinch yourself kind of moment, And then last year we played Download Festival in Japan, the first one they'd ever had there, and we always had this dream that we wanted to A, travel to Japan, and then B, get to tour there. And so we got this offer, and we were actually on tour with Godsmack in Europe, and we didn't want to say no to either, because obviously both is super badass, So we flew from Norway to Tokyo, played the show, and then back to Berlin, which is nuts to think what you can't do now, right? With COVID.
Yeah.
And that was what we did last year. And that was just insane, man, because we were the first band of the day. So that starts to hit you too. Like you've probably had this, Chad, like you do a festival and you see your name on the bill and you're like, awesome. Then you get there and realize like, wow, I hope some people show up, man. This is pretty early,
Yeah.
And there it was like 10 a.m. on a Thursday. So I was like, this is going to be a cool thing to have said we've done, and it's going to be fun, but I don't think that, who's going to be there at 10 a.m. on a Thursday? And you couldn't hear anything. And so I'm saying to the guys, even if it's like, the place held 20,000 people. So I'm like, look, even if there's like 1,000 people, like it looks empty, that's still probably like, that's a club, so, there's still, pardon the pun, making waves. So so we're walking down beside the side stage and you can't hear anything out there. And I was like, wow. And we get up to the side of stage and we looked out, and because as you guys probably know, the Japanese are known for being so polite and respectful, and everybody was just standing silently, patiently waiting, 20,000 people. And we have this, I've always had this cue with they trigger our smoke machines, and I've always used that as a cue to like see how into it the crowd's going to be that night. Because if they cheer for that, then it's like, oh yeah, man, they came for a good time. And if they don't cheer for that, then you're like, okay, cool, fair enough. They need to be warmed up a little, they need to be impressed by more than just somebody cueing the smoke machine, which is fair enough. And
Zach the bass, so, they love that shit.
that's right. You know what to do.
Anyway, sorry.
And anyway, my bass was accidentally live, and I banged against this pole, and it just went through the place, and the whole place erupted. And it's like, oh fuck yeah, this is going to be awesome. And it was AZAC. It was insane. Oh yeah, there's the crowd.
Oh my god, you have the photo.
20,000 people.
What you're not seeing that we're looking at is these four dudes having what seems to be a massive moment in front of 20,000 people. And this is like a flat surface too. They're not like there's 20,000 people like festival style, not in like a bowl at all, not amphitheater. Wow.
Yeah.
That is incredible. What time of the day was that? That looked dark.
Like 10 in the morning.
Does the sun not come up there? Or
was it was in like a big indoor amphitheater place.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That's right.
No, the interesting thing about
10 in the morning.
I'll tell you what, though, that shows that the Japanese are so courteous, because I don't think if they thought, well, American audience is like, well, we'll get there when we get there. We'll miss a few bands. I think Japanese, they feel like they didn't insult the opening band if they didn't show up and see them. And I think they would that's how they value culture like that is just phenomenal. I wish it was really a template for the world, because they also value how much they spend on the ticket. And they're going to get every second worth.
Yeah, it was amazing. I've never seen anything like it. Yeah,
that must have been just like there's no one out there. We can't hear a thing, and they're just waiting. And you're like,
oh, dude,
oh my god,
you could have heard a pin drop, and you're sitting up in the dressing room, and you can, and the countdown clock is going to you have to hit the stage, and then walking beside the stage, they sort of put up these curtains to make this sort of back like makeshift backstage area to get up onto the stage. So you're walking beside where you think a crowd's supposed to be, and you're like, I don't hear anyone, man. And then you get and go up the ramp, and it was the exact opposite. It was so cool.
Amazing.
It's super Spinal Tappy too. Like just I can see it, see the timer in my head going by. It was 5, 4. You're like, fuck. We just flew. You said you flew from Berlin. Is that where you were at before that?
In Norway. We came from Norway.
You're just like, somebody's getting fired after this as you're walking down the stairs and walk out the back. Oh my God, that's incredible.
It's funny because the man who booked us on it, he said, yeah, when I sent you the time of what you're playing, I was really expecting you to tell us, no way, when we saw it was at 10 in the morning. But, we didn't. We were just absolutely blown away that audience was there that early. Just crazy.
Yeah.
I expected you to say, and we were like, we thought it said PM, our bad.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Yeah.
Now, Zach, do you have a story as well that if someone you play with, or maybe an incident that happened on the road or anything like that you care to discuss?
This is a terrible trait I have, and I have so many, but every time, and Kent says the same thing, when you put on the spot, you just never think of them, and then you'll think about it at some random point in your life. Like, oh, that's incredible. How do I not remember that? But there is one, actually there's two, I guess. I mean, just like Japan, we played in Bulgaria with Godsmack, and Godsmack's huge in Bulgaria, and it's a country I never thought I'd go to ever in my life. I mean, I thought it was basically like Borat. I mean, I just knew nothing about it. And it was amazing.
Kazakhstan.
Yeah, it was beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And we got there and we played there, and it was this huge indoor arena, and it was like one of the rowdiest shows we've ever played in our lives. It was like, I think 3 circle pits going on, people jumping up and down. It was just wild. I mean, it felt like we were the headliner and we weren't. We were just so thankful to be there, but it was crazy. I just can't imagine how I played, how they felt. And another thing, like when Kent said we were on tour with Slash, we had the chance to open up for Ozzy Osbourne. And we were told that Sharon Osbourne picks the music by hand. Like she actually listens to it and chooses who opens for Ozzy. And I think he listened to it too, and they both really liked it. And I thought that was really cool and special.
Yeah, that's huge, because she is definitely someone to let you know that she doesn't like you. So.
Yeah.
Holy shit. I mean, that's a huge, how many countries have you guys been to? Bulgaria? I don't know anybody else who's played Bulgaria. At least, tell me about it.
I think 25 now, 26 we've played and toured, and we've been very fortunate to go a lot.
We got lucky because last year we went to Japan twice, Europe twice, the US 3 times, and then New Zealand for a tour as well. And then this year we were going to make an album. So like, I feel really badly for our mates who did the opposite, spent all last year making an album and then thought that this year they were going to hit the road hard, and we know a lot of bands like that. So we got really lucky. We did a lot of traveling last year.
So let's talk about it. You guys are working on a new album. Anything you care to disclose right now? Is it all kind of like mum's the word? You're kind of like no secrets right now.
No, not really. It'll come out in stages next year. We've basically the first track off at the Phoenix has been released. We released that back when the whole lockdown started, and it's been interesting making it the way we've had to as a result of being in different places and doing a lot more of it over Zooms and emails and stuff like that. But we made our last 2 records. We produced the last 2 records ourselves too. So fortunately, we've been able to just carry on with what we've been doing. But yeah, we'll be releasing a lot of it next year. I think we've probably got to have a track coming in early January, and then all of next year. And we've just been. I mean, as I say, we've been grateful that we've been able to stay busy with that, and that we've done the touring we had in 2019, which wasn't by design, obviously. That's just we just got lucky that way this time around.
Yeah.
So COVID. Right here, like
something about COVID, right?
That was I could really do with a year off. Wait a
minute. So let's then talk about Isolation, which obviously very well title is very apt. Just stripped down acoustic. It's a beautiful album.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah, and it's obviously something. When I first queued it up, I was like, I was not expecting that. Certainly. Because I didn't read the liner notes on it. I just thought, okay, new album rec, check it out. And then I started going, wait a minute, hold on, this is super stripped down and super raw, and obviously it's going to touch upon people's emotions for sure, especially this with the title and obviously and everything that's going on. People feel a longing for music and each other, and here we are. Again, it just is almost you guys had like this kind of foreseeing of what was going to happen when you put this out. What was the idea behind that? What was the idea behind it? Okay, don't know where I lost you, Bill. So I'll just ask. Can you hear me now?
Well, that's the audio behind these. Yeah, sorry, man. I think it's Mike. I mean, I'm beaming in from New Zealand here.
Okay, can you hear me now, though? Or either one of you?
All things considered, it's pretty awesome what you can do these days. Have you guys got me?
Seriously.
Yeah, gotcha. What was the inspiration? Can you hear me now? We're all good. Can we hear each other?
Yep.
Okay, good. What was the idea behind the stripped down versions? What was the idea there?
They were the audio from these online shows we were doing for our fans. We did these free online shows back when there was that first lockdown and everybody all over the world was stuck inside. And then they were just the audio that went along with the video. We listened to them and going, hey, those actually turned out pretty good. So we put them together on a CD and then put that up on Spotify. And we've got another one coming out next week. We'll probably just do volumes of them. And when once we get past this stage of the record, we'll probably look at going back and doing some of those online shows again, maybe. But we've always kind of had those two sides. So it'd be cool to figure out how to tour that side of it. Because it's obviously totally different from the other, the more live stuff. Live band stuff,
and some of the stuff you've been putting out too.
Different kinds of music, so we just love getting to play.
Yeah, listening to some of your influences. I don't know if are there influences or just songs you like, because you have everything from Coolio to Goo Goo Dolls. I mean, that's kind of a wide range of things to cover. No, can you hear me?
Yeah, man, I can. Okay, yeah. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yeah.
No,
we're good.
You guys are sounding really great. You just pause every once in a while because of the connection, but I'm sure that's just because of the thoughts that are like beaming out of our brain holes into this right now.
No, like I mean, like was either one of you like to answer? I mean, what was the inspiration behind doing Coolio?
Coolio, it came on in a movie, and then we were in the theater, and we were like, "Fuck, a band could do a pretty cool version of this," And then so we kind of just chipped away at it on the side of making our second record, and then it started coming together, And it's one of those ones that it's like either the crowd loves it as soon as it kicks in, or they're like, "This is totally whack," but then after a while they start to get it when they see kind of what you're doing with it. But it's really funny to watch people's faces when that one starts live. But yeah, it was just like, fuck, a band could really do a mean, heavy version of this. And then we thought, oh shit, let's give it a go.
I'm curious too. There's probably fans young enough to not even realize that actual that's not a cover. They think, well, that's the original song. They don't know that's a cover song. There's some people of some age that don't even know who Coolio is, and I can't imagine that, but there are.
Chris always used to either preface it on stage with saying it was the New Zealand national anthem, or it was about growing up in the mean streets of New Zealand. Or
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, because it's often you hear, hip hop bands will take a rock song and do something with it, but very rare do you have a rock act turn around and do a hip hop song and kind of turn it into more of a, well, in this case, an acoustic song, but they usually rock it up. You don't hear that often.
Yeah, oh yeah. So that's the acoustic, but we've done a heavy version of it too. So we did an acoustic version because we'd done it for those Octane sessions and a few radio shows and stuff like that. So we put that one out too. Yeah.
So with your volume 2, are you going to do the same situation? Because you guys, I mean, being on tour with you, I know that you have covers that have existed, but are you going to do the same with volume 2, where it's some of your tracks and some of the covers that you had covered on those records or previously done in those situations? Or is the next version going to be straight up like your tracks only? Did you get any certain feedback, from the fans, which way to go?
It's going to be, this time we're actually making the leap from Coolio to 90s rap. So we're just going straight there this time. Yeah.
So what are we talking about? Are we talking about is it like a Dre thing, NWA? Or are you going to like 2 Live Crew nights?
The heavy shit, MC Hammer,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you get it.
Can't quit because you're.
It's true. Exactly.
Waka waka.
I would if I could.
Yeah, but I can't.
But I can't.
So with the new record coming out, and if things hold and we can somehow get some sort of normality come next year at some point, European tour, first headlining one.
We've got a European tour. We've got that's going to be rebooked for next year. We've got a New Zealand tour that we'll have to rebook as well, and then we've got some festival dates in the US. So we're kind of just, like everybody, you just wait and see, hope for the best.
Yeah. Sounds like you're kind of
headlining tour, right? Oh, sorry, Justin.
No, I was just gonna. If you're doing all this, you're doing, your homeland, and then you're doing Europe and the States for some festivals. You guys are ping ponging around. So, again, a very full schedule.
We love it. I mean, I think we're lucky. The 4 of us just love traveling. So, like on our days off, if we're in France, we'll go to Omaha, and so we love going around visiting all the history. We love going to when we were in Tokyo, we went to all the different prefectures, try and see as much of it as you can, and Berlin with all of the monuments they have around there. That's a really cool, I mean, we're really lucky to get to travel around and do that.
Yeah.
So so we're looking forward to it when it starts up again.
A quick question. When you guys talk about traveling around cities when you have a day off, do you guys get recognized? Are you at that point?
It's happened to me a couple of times. I don't know. I'm not very tall, so I blend in very easily. But the other guys, they're pushing 6 feet. I think they get recognized a lot more than I do.
Okay.
I'm the bassist. I got nothing to worry about.
Yeah. Just always
curious. When it's like, hey, do you know who those guys are?
Yeah. When we first started, I had to sell our own merch. And it was way back when we first started, and people would come up and they'd be like, "Are they any good?" And I'd be like, "No, they suck." And then afterwards, he'd come back and see me, and they're like, "You should have told me you were in the band." So no, I don't.
Yeah. I've been with Chris before, and someone's like, "Yo, can you take my photo with him?" I'm like, "Sure," and then they just walk away after him. All right.
Yeah, exactly.
God, terrible.
I've had that too.
Isn't that the most awkward thing? I mean, I've been on the receiving end of both ends, right? I've been like the guy standing next to Jason, and Jason's like, "Okay, I guess I'll take this photo of you guys."
Yeah,
and has my photo back, and then vice versa, especially with Pooey, because he's like Pooey. He's such a character, right? You can't miss him. And when I shave my beard, I'm very, very dismissible. But at one point you would watch him just come, he's just standing there getting all these pictures taken. I said, "Hey, we got to get in the van and get out of here." And he's like, "Okay, man." He's all drunk. And then somebody goes, "Can you get my photo with him?" I'm like, "Yeah, no problem." Get in the fucking van. As I'm clicking the camera. You guys have been, of all that touring though, this is like your first, this was going to be your first headliner, right? In Europe?
Yeah, in Europe.
Yeah, it was.
So we got about that. Yeah. So
it's going to happen still, hopefully.
Yeah, well.
Man. That does
Can I
suck,
ask you guys a question? I'm always kind of curious about we always talk about, you go to play in Bulgaria and it's massive, and the culture there is so still driven by rock and roll. Why do you think the differences between audiences in Europe and America are?
What do you reckon, Zach? You want to go?
You can go. I'll go in after you.
Well, I think to a certain degree they're kind of different culturally everywhere, just for what the culture of the place is. Like, I remember we did a tour of Canada, and it kind of didn't really seem like the crowds were into it at all. And then afterwards, they'd be like, "That was great, that was great." But because that's sort of the culture they are. And the US can have that really cool tailgating party. And when US people, they come for like a good time, like a party. They're there to celebrate. And then in Europe, it's almost like medieval, the level of like how hard out they're going, because it just goes back. That's just what they've done, and then in Japan, I think that's the moment they have to really express themselves. So the rest of it, they're always so reserved and polite and conscious of each other. And then this is their time to go nuts. So it's been really cool to watch. I mean, it's all amazing, but yeah. It's interesting because
the Europe thing, the medieval.
Yeah. Can I ask a question about the Europe thing? Because I was discussing this today, and Justin, you might even agree or have something to add here. One of the things I noticed, and I notice every day in the news in general, is I feel like there's a sense of, in Europe and most countries, but specifically Europe, there's like I trust you sense when it comes to the press, when it comes to people who are like movers and shakers inside of that nucleus that is a music community. The BBC guys, when you get the stamp of approval over there by one of those larger publications, I mean, print still exists in a major way there, right? If you get like in a stamp of approval over there, it really means something, and it transcends and helps your career. Versus here, it's like, not to talk shit about any publication, because it's really not their fault. It's the overarching version of it. But like a Loudwire, right? Everybody gets jacked when they get like a premiere on Loudwire, but it never really moves the needle the way that like, a Metal Hammer premiere or something like that would get the band, specifically there. And even in the States. Do you guys have any experiences with that, or have anything that you've noticed in that way?
Yeah, I wonder if it's just it's a bit more ingrained culturally into what they do there. If you're into like there are those magazines like Kerrang and stuff that have a really big presence, whereas in the US the US is quite a social media driven culture, isn't it? So everybody can have their own sense of what they're really into, but there isn't those sort of unifying heavyweight voices in the way that you get it, because you get it down here in New Zealand too, because there are until recently there have been very few sort of main channels, and so there are these like, and sadly I don't think they exist anymore, but there used to be just these legendary publications, which I think
is there like tastemakers, like is there like I'm trying to think of like somebody, like a Jose Mangan, right? He's like the version on XM radio where if you premiere something with them, people will listen and they'll take it for more than just like background music. But there's a lot more of those same exact outlets here that people don't really seem to react from, even if the song is great. It doesn't really move the needle, is what I'm getting at. And then over there, it kind of does,
That's been an interesting thing with the US, and you could probably speak to it too. With being in a band, was always like, how do you let people know when your new albums come out? Because in Japan, it was, it's this magazine, and it's, this guy's the Howard Stern of rock radio over there, and they still have those, and Europe kind of does too, with the Metal Hammers and the Kerrangs and stuff like that. And then you get to the US and you're talking to the publicist, and it's, but I mean, shit, man, it's a big place with a lot of people, so.
Yeah, I just always kind of took away this idea that I feel like the public trusts those tastemakers and those publications word a little bit more. Maybe that's just because of of my own.
You got more hashtag fake news in the US. Is that what you're trying to tell us?
Sure, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think you can come out. You can come out and say it. It's okay. I knew where you were going with that.
It's like the version of the veil gets exposed, right? Somebody's like, "This is how this happened. It's all about advertising, blah blah blah." So people are disenfranchised by what's put in front of their face. Like, I don't need to pay attention to this because it's probably just an ad, right? we're over there when somebody's like, coming up next on the Hot Hour, we got Shit Fuck Fuck Fest Mountain at 2:00, brand new. And they're like, Shit Fuck Fuck Fest Mountain? I'm going to listen for sure because, you know, Dick Clark, the radio guy or whatever it is, said to, you know? That's what I'm kind of like, I see it happen all the time. Like, you can shake the tree as much as you want, but sometimes the fruit just won't fall.
Yeah, they've got that culture of tastemakers, don't they? Much more in Europe.
I find it,
with those sort of institutional stations and stuff like that are still going strong.
I think in England, obviously, London is still seen as this epicenter for basically information. I mean, how many bands that are U.S. bands, for one, didn't break until the NME or someone talked about them, like Rival Sons or, you know, Kings of Leon. And we still have, we had Tom the guys Petty from Blackstone Cherry. Yeah, we had Ben from Blackstone Cherry and even Alter Bridge, where they're playing theaters over here. They'll play arenas in Europe. It's interesting. But I think England has always had something, whether it's John Peel or Sounds, or now with Metal Hammers being these kind of like trusted, because they have such tradition of having a really great track record. I think in the States, I think once after MTV stopped playing things, like when Matt Pinfield and all of them were kind of telling you what's what, I think when they stopped playing music is when we lost our kind of those tastemakers we used to look at. So it's always interesting, but now bands have to be very savvy in their own social media in order to kind of move those things.
Yeah, I also feel that Europe and Japan, they're very loyal fans, and if they like you from one album, they'll like you forever. And in America, and not that it's like bad or anything, but it's just like, you know, picking and choosing. You'll listen to this, and then you might listen to that. But out there, it's just dedication for life, and that's how it's just different. I don't know if you agree, Kent, but it just seems like people in Europe, sometimes we've seen them, they say they've been sleeping outside of the venue for 3 days because they want to get front row. And it happens in America, just not as much. I think it's just way more passionate out there.
Yeah.
Americans, am I right, guys? Anyone?
I know.
Oh.
Well, yeah. Well, I think, I mean, as much as America loves music and stuff like that, I think it's just where it used to kind of drive the culture. It's just part of pop culture now. It's not like, but I still feel Europe, it's still, music still kind of drives the culture. So it's paid attention to. And again, obviously it takes you 2 months to do a full US tour. You can do like the United Kingdom in 10 days. Yeah. So it's a lot to cover.
You know, lastly about this is about culture. You know, for instance, we're on the Shiprocked podcast right now, and the ship in general, I feel like is a beacon for what culture and the incubator of bands and community and all of that kind of should be and can be. Simply like when you're a new band on the ship, Wilson knows about this, and you guys know about this. People pay attention that moment and then continue to, just like you said, Zach, like they do in Japan, where it's like, it's not just a fleeting moment and somebody's not like, well, you know, I could go check out this band. This is after the ship, right? You know, I could go check out this band that I saw on the ship, but tonight instead I'm going to watch, you know, fucking whatever on YouTube and jerk off for a few hours. They're going to go to the fucking show. They're still going to jerk off later, but for that evening, the first
for moment, a few hours. Hang on, for a few hours.
When you get like, you know, it's a fucking
that was
COVID, bro.
That was a real vignette into Chad's life.
I got plenty of time. But the culture that the ship kind of creates, and and then the further burn of that culture is what I wish the music community scene, especially in rock and roll in 2020, could take a page from. What do you guys think about your experience?
I know what you mean by Shiprock. You go on there and you have fans for life after Shiprock. There's nothing like it in the world. And when we first did it, we didn't know what to expect. We didn't know if people would like us. And it's just amazing. Everyone wants to hang out and be friends, and they're all fans. And like you said, they'll go listen to you and support you forever after that. And that's what is really special about Shiprock, which it's one of a kind for sure.
Yeah, and America does community really well. Like the culture and community, like the way all of the Shiprockers get together, or even, you know, like when you go out on tours with bands, like you go out on tour with your band or with our band, and you can see the fans have met one another and they've all traveled a distance to come together. And so in the US, you do see that sense of you do see that sense of community coming together that you maybe don't see in other countries. So that's a big plus. And you definitely see it with Shiprocked, man, because you go on tour and you see the Shiprock shirts showing up all around the country at your shows, you know, and people are just, it's like a way of life. They look forward to it every year. As you say, they really encourage the new bands and latch on and take an interest and support you. Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, I think it's twofold. I mean, one, you just can't. You mentioned the guys that stay out three days before the show is because they want to get front or whoever. It's those basically 5,000 of those kind of people on the ship.
Sure.
Yeah,
you know, they're that type. And also too, it's we're noticing over years the growth of people from Europe and from other parts of the world. I mean, last year, I believe, or the year before, I think we do a thing contest like who came the farthest to come to this, and it was someone from New Zealand. And,
yeah, I've met some people on the ship from New Zealand. It was crazy.
So to have about 20%, yeah. So to have about 20% of people from, you know, and I love it because they bring that kind of European festival attitude where they're flying the flags and everything like that, and it's a tribal kind of thing, and I love that. I'm always like, man, I always tell people, like, if you come from like Kansas or Colorado, bring your state flag, man. Let's fly them all. That'd be really just to add to the experience of like, man, we're all from everywhere, but we're all one here. Oh, that sounded like a fucking hippie, but you know.
No, man. I mean, not to get all weird, but that's the whole point of like why I think everybody loves it is they can be the hippie, you know? They can be this part of that part of themselves that's like, this is so dope. Here's somebody from Norway and the Swedes and New Zealand and US and sometimes Canada, you know, and they'll come together on the ship, and for 1 week of their lives, they're all one, you know, and that's like the community that even any festival, there's very few in the US at least that are based around that same exact culture.
You know,
and you could just everybody's partying, and you could just it's what I loved about it is it's so easy to get to a concert, like obviously, but you know, you don't have to drive anywhere, park it. You just like, shit, they're on in the theater, and you just sort of rock on over with your drink, you know, and you go and watch for a bit, then you know, go to another one. Yeah, it's rad.
Yeah,
great. So
I'm
you guys
always
had
curious
a good time on your ship? Sorry, Justin, you go.
No, I was just gonna ask, what was your experience like with the fans? I mean, was it when you guys first come on? And Chad usually asks this question, but I'm just gonna ask. It's like, what's it like when you first come on the gangway and you go into the atrium where everyone boards a ship, and you're going, oh my God, we're going to be around all of this craziness, and how are we going to do this? What was your reaction like with the fans? Were they first? My thinking has always been like, they meet you one time and then basically just treat you like a friend, let you do your thing. They don't bother you. They kind of get on with things, which we always appreciate because we want our artists to feel like, hey, they're relaxed, they can have fun here. What was your experience like?
It's been amazing every time we've ever done. I mean, no one's rude and no one's in your face or whatever. Everyone just treats you like a friend of theirs. And like you just said, they meet you and it's easy. And like you don't feel like there's any strangers on the ship. You feel like you know everyone. And it's like just one big community, and everyone's really respectful of everything, and everyone's really friendly and kind. And I've never had a bad experience on Shiprocked ever.
I love it.
Yeah, we've got to know some of them pretty well as a result, you know, and it's cool. It's a cool balance because it's like when you first get on, you know, people come up and they're complimentary about your band, which, you know, is awesome. But then they'll hang out and talk. But as you say, everybody just treats you like a mate.
Yeah.
Nobody's, but I mean, I've had some great, like, even like days when everybody would get off the ship and go and do the excursions, and there might be a few people, you know, like me that just felt like chilling, and you just sitting having lunch together. You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love seeing it when I wake up in the morning. I see like bands having breakfast with you know, just the cruisers or whatever. Like, man, that's such a cool connection for both. You know, because now an artist can sit down and just talk about the weather instead of like about their music probably, and the fan is like, oh my God, this is great. What an experience I'm having.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
very cool.
Ship legs, you guys ever had them after you got off the ship?
I don't think so. I don't know. I was kind of nervous about that, but I didn't really ever feel seasick once. I guess it's so big. I guess you don't really feel it move. But
the first time we played, it got too rough for our main stage gig.
Right, I remember that.
So we were up in the front lounge, you know, that top one up the front of the boat, and we did two up there. And the second one was the really rough night. and I'm playing, and and I usually kind of like nod in time with the music, and it was just the waves were just carrying me forward further and further into the drums, just about smashing the cymbals with my own head, and then I'm like, oh, I don't feel too good, man. And I look up and the chandeliers are just going whoosh, 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 back and forth.
Oh, dude, that's terrifying. And
but it was rad. It was still packed out.
Like, don't fucking barf on me, please. Don't.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, dude. Well, I thought I was just going to arse it and smash it and fall into the drum kit,
Oh,
yeah. Well, cool. So basically, what we're looking at then for you guys then is the full new album in 2021, and then if things clear up, then the tour commences, and it'll take you probably into 2022.
Yeah, that's the plan, man. As soon as life gets back to normal, we've got a lot of tours that we've got to go and hit the road with, and some new tunes in between.
Oh, that's gonna be amazing. And that's really a smart thing. I see a lot of bands doing it too, where they're just kind of dropping a song here and there. You keep everyone interested. You keep people can really digest that one track until they're ready for the next one. And that's just a really smart way to do it right now. Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of seems to be the way it's shifting with how people are making their own playlists and stuff. Mm-hmm. So it works well if you're sort of in this kind of position too. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So guys, we like to end these conversations with something called the Big Three. And basically we'll ask you guys both the same question, 3 of them. And it's not even, it might be music related if you'd like it to be, but it's generally just general questions. So Chad, you'd like to begin that, please?
I think I know the answer to this question. So I'm going to start with Zach. My question, and I'm probably wrong, but I think I'm right. Zach, if you could be anybody else in the whole world besides Zach, who would you pick? It has to be living.
Jeff Bezos wouldn't be a bad idea.
Definitely didn't think you were going to say that. I thought you were going to say Kent because the bass thing. But wow. Jeff Bezos, yeah, you're making some money. That's for sure. Yeah. Ken, do you want to be Zach?
Well, I was gonna. Yeah, I'm hurt. My feelings are hurt now. I was gonna say Zach, but
yeah. Well, fuck it. I'm gonna be Bezos instead. Then.
There you go. That's right. Yeah.
But Ken, who would you be?
Who would I be? I don't know. Don't you think everybody looks like they come with a lot of baggage? It looks pretty exhausting being some of those, rich and famous types.
Could be. You could be be somebody that we don't even know.
You could be just Bob from down the street.
Yeah. You could be like, you could be super jealous of your neighbor and tell us all about it right
now. I don't know, man. I don't have a good answer for that. I don't know. Who would I be right now? I don't know. It's been such a weird year because it's been so insular. You just, it hasn't been a year where you're like thinking about a lot of people.
If you want to throw the answer away, that's fine. We can circle back at it.
Let's move on.
Yeah, get some thoughts.
Okay, well, let me ask you.
Just write down Zach just for now in pencil.
Put Zach in. I'll lock in Zach. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Zach. When we're talking about Zach, let's talk about this one. Is there one fear that you would like to conquer that you have?
Flying. I absolutely hate flying, but I need to do it for my job, and it just.
I was gonna say, what profession are you in?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I don't even know what it is. It's like an irrational fear that like the power is gonna cut out, and it doesn't even make sense. But it just every flight, that's all I think about the whole time.
Oh, it makes sense. You're on a bucket of steel, 30,000 feet up in the air. I get it, but. Yeah. What do you do then right now to kind of like keep it at bay when you are flying?
I try to watch as many films as I can and try not to think about it. It's kind of all I can do. I can't sleep on planes. I can't. I don't know. I get really restless. I often wonder. I'm very jealous of the other 3 in the band because they're all tall and they can sleep like babies on flights. I just always wish I could do that, and I just cannot save my life. But that's probably my worst fear, to be honest.
Do you think the way to conquer then is just to keep flying until basically it just becomes part of your norm?
Probably. I mean, by the time a tour is over and you're so tired and you just, you've been traveling nonstop for a month, the plane could be shaking like crazy and you're so tired, you don't even care. So probably.
Yeah. All right. Kent, same question. What's the one fear you have that you would like to conquer?
In the last few years, I've like started to develop the fear of sharks more and more. And the problem is now I'm back in New Zealand where they have sharks out in the sea. And I also
got some big ones.
I also want to, yeah, I know, dude. I had this big fear of sharks while I was living in Toronto by a lake for the last few years. And now I'm actually by the sea. It's coming up to summer. And I also want to get back into surfing. And it's kind of like the thing I can't get past in my mind is it's kind of like going into the jungle with quicksand. And people are like, yeah, there's a shitload of lions out there. And you're like, oh, fuck, I can't move very fast in here. If one comes to me, and goes, yep, that's pretty much it, man. And, so it's like you go willingly into their habitat where you move slow as fuck. And then you just let, and I just can't get past that thought.
When you think about
it. Everyone, I'm sure every surfer probably goes, they don't want their Mick Fanning moment,
That's true. And I always have, and my brother's always like, dude, you do understand, like it hardly ever happens, but that's why it's the one I want to get over. But I can't,
is it just getting out? I mean, have you ever like gotten a cage and just done the swimming with sharks or something to kind of meet them head on and you kind of get a better understanding of them? What do you do to conquer the shark fear?
Stop being a pussy, I think is what they said to do.
I don't know.
Well, I don't want to be lunch. I don't in the cage and just like box it out with one of those.
Yeah, knock them out. Yeah, I guess you just get out there and keep doing it, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I know statistically it's not going to happen, but I think when you're just up there on your surfboard looking like a seal.
Yeah. Well, best to get in a group and get around someone who's fat. Yeah.
That's how I conquer it.
Yeah, but the idea of shark attacks, on my way they say it's like you basically have a better chance of getting struck by lightning under a rainbow, right, while riding a unicorn.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Or to like how your plane to go down while you're flying.
Probably, yeah.
Right, the shark-infested waters.
Jesus.
Yeah.
The two of you are just like, oh, this can't be happening right now.
No, like, man, listen, I get the whole thing because when you swim in the bayous here or anything, they do have signs about gators, and gators are very real.
Another one.
Yeah, they're they come at you like underwater too, and they're just a menace, But they're like they're like a small car themselves, some of them. So yeah,
I think refer to a gator as a menace.
Yeah,
do what now?
Exactly.
Yeah. You're like, they're a menace. Like it's like a bug that you just smack off your head.
Hey, Gatorade a baby. What a menace.
Yeah, that's right. Chad, I'm going to hand this one off to you. This is from a fan, I think number 3.
Yeah. So the question that we were posed to ask is, and you kind of touched on it earlier, Zach. So of all of your personality traits that you're aware of, which of those is something that you feel like the question is what if any personality trait would you change? So it kind of leans into that, if you weren't you, who would you be question. But like, imagine being yourself, but only you didn't, fart uncontrollably or something,
I've been meaning to work on that. Wow, this is getting deep now. I'm really impatient, I think. At least I'm told I'm impatient by everyone that's around me. But I think I'd probably be a little more patient. I'm the type of person that puts less time on the microwave or, all that kind of stuff. With everything, I'm impatient about everything.
Yeah, you're rolling the dice on Ebola just like on a constant basis.
Yeah, I mean, that's but like everything, I need it to be done faster.
Less time on the microwave.
Yeah. You're like, it says 3 minutes, but I'm going to go with
I can't.
3 minutes. Yeah, exactly.
Patience is hard, man. I mean, I'm super impatient. That's like the biggest part of my personality. Yeah. I agree with you. That's the first thing.
But again, Zach, you're in the hurry up and wait business.
There we go. I know. It's funny. Everyone thinks, backstage is like, nothing but partying and drugs or whatever they think it is. And it's really just on your phone hanging out all day. That's all it is. And Chad would know all about that. It's just hanging.
It's the worst. Especially as when you get to those spaces, we're like, oh, okay, so this is
Oh,
where I have
this is
to
where we are
spend
today. Yeah,
the
totally.
next 7 hours before the thing that I'm supposed to do happens, when I was doing the 10 of it with my buddies in the car just before I got here.
Totally.
My life. How about you, Ken?
Oh, I think, and it's been tested a lot this year too, is like trying to control shit you have no control over. You know, I always like to have a sense of what we're doing and what we're planning, and it's been really cool in past years to do stuff like want to go to Japan and get to Japan, or getting to put records out and planning when you're going to do that or when you're going to go and do these tours. But you kind of just realize like there's just some shit in life that you have no control over, you know, and so that's one thing I got to get better at.
What is your go-to, like, can you give me in a scenario, even if it's not to do with the band, that like you are essentially also kind of sort of impatient, but more or less like that need for the info, that need to make a choice, I suppose. Can you give us an example?
Well, this year with all the touring, you know, it was like we had this European tour, and they put the world into lockdown. So I'm like, cool, no worries, let's set it up for August. So then you set it up for August. And you go, oh, okay, cool, no worries, let's set it up for November. So then I set it up for November, and then you're just starting to see the trend of like, nah, man, you can't control this, you know?
Yeah, it's a big test. Yeah, I didn't even think about it that way, but that's a huge test. Between patience and the ownership of control, those are some massive flashlights on those areas of our uncomfortable stability as artists. I think we all kind of share some of that, but specifically as artists, I think we're a little bit more grandiose when it comes to patience, the virtues of patience and trust.
Yeah, for sure, man. For sure.
Yeah.
Making Waves is slowly wound down into a psychology experiment.
Love it.
So yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's good. It's good to hear the thought process of creative, people on when they just deal with things that, people who don't work in this business or aren't a musician or an artist, they deal with the same thing, just in a different manner, obviously. But so it's always really good for people to hear this kind of talk, so.
Yeah, absolutely. Like when I was younger, my granddad said to me, he was like, I've been around long enough that I know the one door opens when another door closes. And so I try and be philosophical about that, but it's kind of goes against your nature,
Yeah, absolutely.
You want to feel like you're always in control of what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, well, Chad, we've had these gentlemen for a little over an hour. Is there anything you'd like to end with?
There's lots of things I'd like to end with. One of them being I love you both, and it was great to see you, and I cannot wait for the new record to come out, and hopefully after your European crusher, you'll come over to the States, and I can kiss you both on the mouth post-COVID, of course. I'll show you my papers.
You'll have the vaccine by then. Man. You'll be fine.
Yeah, true. Yeah. Well, we love you guys too, man. We appreciate it so much. Good to see you dudes. And so maybe
Zach,
we'll all be...
No, I was going to say, Zach, Kent, thank you so much. Obviously, please say hey to the fellas. And we look forward to seeing what you guys do in 2021. It's going to be really exciting. New album 2021 for the gentlemen in Like a Storm, and then a tour to follow after that. And they'll be touring the world, folks, so they will see you at some point. Real quick, before we check off here, I want to thank you to Al, Alan, Jen, and Heather, our staff, for making Waves happen. So we appreciate it. We'll see everyone again in early December. Everyone have a great Thanksgiving.
Love you. Right.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. We really appreciate your time.
Cheers, guys.
Yeah, Jen, are you getting? Yeah, absolutely, guys. Thank you so much.